Welcome to Speaking of. My name is Ben, and with
And
me
this,
is
and this is John.
John. You were early that time for a change.
I know. It's like automatic now. Anytime somebody says Ben, I go and John, and it doesn't even
Yes,
matter if it's on a podcast or not.
must seem really weird at work.
Yeah, kind of a little bit.
So, anyway, we're here to talk to you about Gotham and the series so far. We'll be restricting it to episodes 1 through 4, since those are the ones that have aired so far, and to minimize spoilers. Although I hear episode 5 has some really good content. Um, so John and I are going to sound off about what we thought of the series so far, some ideas, where we think it's succeeding or failing, and hopefully you'll agree or disagree, and tell us about it in the comments. So John, you've been watching Gotham in the season so far. What have you thought?
I think they need to rename it. It needs to be renamed to Gotham: The Penguin Years.
Yeah, I will definitely agree with you there. They have spent a lot of time on Penguin character development, and I don't necessarily have a problem with that because he is canonically an established, mob-tied villain when Batman comes along. So I think that it works. Um, but it is kind of an interesting focus that they've definitely put there.
Yeah, and we're definitely talking about it's like Lex Luthor. The early years of Lex Luthor, he was just a supervillain, and then later on, he became the supervillain, but businessman who had legitimate concerns all over town and was hard to pin down legally.
Right,
This Penguin is the same thing. He's not the 1966 Batman serial, wah 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 guy.
right,
He's
right.
he's he's a freaking serial killer.
Right.
I
Yeah, and
mean,
he's serious business. I mean, we've seen him from the first episode being sort of backstabbing and conniving to pull for position as a low level in Fish Mooney's organization to essentially being a pawn in getting uh, Gordon with the program, as they like to keep referring to it, and only to slowly come back up and weasel his way back into things, which I have to say it's pretty clever, ballsy, definitely to come back to Gotham after the events from the beginning of the season.
I wouldn't exactly say it's ballsy. More like, in one way, he's kind of a criminal genius,
Hmm.
but only because I think he's clinically insane.
Perhaps.
But in coming back, he's also showing his other side where he's so egocentric. He thinks that that everything is going to work out for him because he's too smart for everybody else. That's what he thinks.
Yeah, I can see that. And definitely, to be fair, I mean, even though Gordon spared his life, he's not the kind of guy who feels who probably has a strong sense of honor or feels that he owes Gordon anything. He doesn't care if Gordon ends up getting outed from all of this.
Right.
Gordon owes him, or he owes Gordon nothing as far as he's concerned, even though he technically does owe him his life. Um, but so yeah, it's not really that surprising that he shows his face back in Gotham. At least he is making an effort to stay under the radar though, and keep from getting Gordon in trouble.
Right.
So, but that is the thing I will say that I've found a little surprising with this is that setup early on of basically, you know, pointing out the degree of corruption in Gotham City by, Gordon being nearly taken out by the mob and then being sort of forced by uh, Mulroney. What is his name?
Yeah, Maroney.
Maroney, um, to sort of get with the program, and commit some act to show his loyalty.
Yeah, they don't really so much as point out the the seedy side of Gotham in this as carve the word corrupt in a bat and then start beating you over the head with it. It's
They-
like every other line in this show is, oh, but it's Gotham, and oh yeah, but
right.
you could pay anybody, or it's just every other
Yeah.
line is like an affirmation that yes, Gotham is corrupt. We understand that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I definitely, I went into it expecting a little bit more of the um, Law and Order Gotham edition.
Yeah.
But we really aren't getting that, and I think part of the reason we aren't getting that is because that would require the law enforcement to be organized and following the rules, and
You
they don't.
can't
you
have
know
law and order without law.
exactly,
Or
exactly.
order then,
Right.
but for
There's order, but it's not the right kind.
mm.
um so it is, but it is interesting. There's a lot of melodrama a bit, I think, especially with the mafia uh politics.
Which of course Penguin is taking a big stick and stirring up.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
um, what else? The other character that I really like is Catwoman. Well, the future
Sure, sure. Cat,
Catwoman.
as she's referring to herself right
Yeah,
now. That's I do like her, but at the same time, it kind of bugs me that they're scraping those characters for this show. Like I feel like, especially with the pilot, I felt like they overloaded it. I felt like they put too many references to characters. Like you had,
yeah.
because you had the Penguin, you had Cat Girl show up, you had uh,
Enigma.
Enigma, yeah. And you had a little girl named Ivy. Like they
Yeah,
had all these things that it just seemed way too heavy-handed. They've backed down a little bit on it, but
it's too.
it's
Yeah, you're right. It's too contrived. It's
yeah,
just it's again the Star Wars effect of everything happens
yeah,
to only a specific set, a small set of people, and nobody else matters, and you can't possibly have other things happen later on.
right,
You know?
right. And there's definitely I feel like that's the show kind of feels like a little bit like episode one. Luckily, we haven't had a Jar Jar yet, but it has that feel of like they're making these big important introductions of characters that aren't really big or important right now.
Yeah.
So um, hopefully they get that honed in. I'd like to see them some sort of keep tighter rails on that. I know that they're planning to introduce Harvey Dent in the near future, which it's another one that kind of bugs me because I feel like he should be younger. I feel like he should
Oh
be
yeah.
closer to Bruce Wayne's age.
Well, they were supposed to be friends, so how
Right.
can they be friends if he's old enough to be in office at this point?
Right, right. Clearly, that's not gonna fit in this particular cinematic or television cinematic universe.
Well, unless they introduce him as a young boy, as becomes friends with Bruce Wayne.
That's not the impression I've gotten though. I've gotten from they've shown I saw a screenshot just the other day of him in costume, playing the part, and I got the impression that he's already, a young adult suited up. They show him tossing a coin. So if he's not the district attorney, he's at least working in their office. He's at least a lawyer at this point, which makes him significantly older than Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Um, Edward Nigma fits that as well. He's supposed to be a little bit more contemporary to Bruce Wayne than they're making him out to be. So
Uh,
I've got a couple of those that I just that bothers me a bit that they're drawing from that well a little more often than I think they should.
yeah, and they haven't. We promised that we weren't going to discuss the last episode that just ran called Viper, but I will say they aren't laying off the adding more characters thing, or at
Yeah.
least referring in this one they referenced yet another character and changed the origin of something, and you'll see when you see it. So,
Yeah.
uh, but okay, so what else we got?
Well, another thing that I think we should address is the treatment of Bruce Wayne himself.
Yes,
I think that,
have to.
at least in my expectations, I definitely expected, I knew going in that they was gonna start centered around the Wayne murder, so I definitely expected we'd see him in the first episode. I kind of thought we'd see less of him over time. But he's not going away. We keep seeing him week in and week out. They keep having more character development and more forward momentum of his story, making this more of a Batman origin story than it is what I'd expected to be a James Gordon uh, origin story.
Well, I can almost see it. I mean, at least they're portraying him like maybe they should. I mean, Batman or Bruce Wayne, he's got a genius level intelligence,
Yeah,
and he's later on he trains himself to physical perfection and all that. So we're seeing
right.
at least that they're portraying him that yes, he's still a little boy, but he's already tracking down shell companies,
Yeah,
and he's got an interest in making things right.
right.
The interaction with um, Alfred is a little bit off, I think, though.
Yeah, well,
Alfred
it's
seems
a
more.
yeah, I agree. Alfred seems a little not Alfred. It's not a version of Alfred I'm familiar with from the various movies and comics that I've seen him in. Um, he's very out of his sorts a bit. He doesn't seem like he often comes across like if you look at the original couple movies, Batman Returns, and
Batman Begins.
the ones that I won't name, and
Yeah.
yes, Batman Begins. Both Michael Caine and the other guy who played that part, um,
Mhm.
he was very fatherly, very paternal, very
Well,
kind-hearted,
yeah, he
and
acted like a long-term family confidant.
exactly, exactly. He definitely supported Bruce in his endeavors because he knew he wasn't going to dissuade him from them, but he didn't really add anything to it per se. It wasn't. He just was sort of there for the ride. This version of Alfred that they're illustrating, he seems to have some sort of potentially military background, like MI6 kind of background, and seems to, I don't know, be out of sorts, and even like I'm not even sure how he managed to be a good butler in the first place. Like he doesn't seem the butler type.
You know what they're
Um,
drawing it from? The very last Batman cartoon that played.
yeah,
That
it is
one,
similar to that. You're right.
Alfred had a military background, and and that sort of thing. He kind of acts like the same.
Yeah. Yeah, it is similar to that. I'll agree that there is a parallel there, but it's an odd paradigm.
Yeah.
And the other thing that concerns me with this is the way that they're drawing out Bruce, the way that he's inquisitive and looking into these cases and continually corresponding with Gordon on these points.
That's a little.
I don't see it being realistic that Gordon doesn't draw draw any conclusions later when he does become Batman.
Exactly. Yeah, and to add to that, it can't be they wouldn't be able to do this kind of interaction for another for say they could probably do this for another 2 seasons, but after that, he would have to have begun his physical training,
Right,
somewhere.
right.
He can't just if this say this series goes on for like 10 years. Well, but by that time it would be too late for him to have started any kind of martial arts training to be what he became, unless he started being Batman at 35. And
Yeah,
even then. So it's I don't just I can't see this kind of interaction going on too long without, at the end of season 2 they'd have to have him start to go traveling or something.
right, right. They'd have to have that him develop in other ways. The one thing I will say that I find interesting, and it's funny because I had this chat with Dave, like like the second week of Gotham. That I was like, talking about the same sort of things, but I think one of the things that's missing that I think would be a good thing to include as an inspiration to Bruce is some attempts at vigilanteism, even if they're failed ones, but something else to sort of show that heroism can work. And then lo and behold, in week three we get Balloon Man. Granted he was misguided a bit and didn't really wasn't really successful per se, but he did that. He basically was an attempt at vigilanteism to deal with the corruption in Gotham.
Yeah, he got the hanging the criminals from way far high
Right.
right. He just didn't get the letting them down easy part.
Yeah, yeah.
Eh, um,
So some flaw in execution.
yeah, it almost I almost yeah, I had the weirdest. When I saw when Balloon Man got introduced, I almost thought it was there's a new um, uh, arch enemy or whatever that's been popping up in some of the serials and everything. Professor Pig.
Yeah, he did use the Professor Pig mask.
Yeah,
And I thought that was a nod to that. And I want to say, didn't he have? There was another guy that sort of outed him that kind of seemed like, I want to say he was shorter and kind of seemed to have bulgy eyes.
yeah, yeah. I got that feeling too, but a nod. It wasn't
Yeah,
Professor
yeah.
Pig, although
Right, right.
Professor Pig would be a much more interesting foe, considering he's the one that will play the game and when Batman wins, stop and walk away for another day and not like e- e- extract retribution for having
Right.
been denied.
Right. I think they have to skirt a careful line with these things, in that I don't think, I don't think they can tread too much into the ground of costumed villains, because without a hero for them to be opposite, they're not going to fit in this version of Gotham. I like the idea that's sort of established in A Dark Knight, where this rise of costume villainy was in somewhat in response the to Batman himself and the vacuum he created
Right,
by taking down organized crime.
right. And you've already, I mean, you're already seeing like penguins, uh, wearing the suit, and I'm sure at some point they'll introduce an umbrella.
Yeah,
But
or
but
maybe a monocle.
yeah, but he's getting his costume or whatever is getting introduced slowly, and
Yeah,
Selena Kyle already looks like Catwoman. And
yeah,
although
for
there
better
was
or
the
worse.
mention, yeah, although there was the mention that she said, "Well, I can talk to cats," so you got to wonder. Is that a metahuman ability, or is that just I'm really in tune with cats, or
I want to
I'm
say it's
destined to
just,
be the cat lady down the
yeah,
street? I
yeah. I think it's more the latter, that she's just living on the streets and spends time with cats and just has an affinity there.
And she
Uh,
said she can see in the dark too. And
yeah,
that I'm just wondering if they're going to introduce metahuman abilities.
maybe.
And I, I there's kind of something like that in Viper,
Okay.
but not.
Yeah,
And you'll see.
we will. Um, so yeah, I definitely think that it's got some promise. It has been picked up for a full season, so I'm sure we'll be talking about this some more in the future. Um, I'm not gonna say this has been my favorite show of this ilk this season.
Kind of hard
Um,
with Flash around, but
right, right. Flash has been great. Arrow has always been great, and
yep.
Agents of Shield is way up there. But I'm gonna keep, giving it its due, and hopefully it'll start to find its rhythm.
I know the show's not nothing to sneeze at, but yeah, I agree. It's not my favorite right now. It could grow into it. They're not they've pulled in. I think they bit off more than they can chew by pulling in too many references in the beginning, instead of trusting that if they did it right, they'd have more than a couple of episodes to start introducing new characters, or showing us the circumstances that brought those characters in, instead of having just all start right there,
Yeah,
which is kind of really coincidental.
true.
um, but I keep watching it just to see, because, like you said, it didn't become Gotham Law and Order. It's more of it really is almost a historical viewing of what happened in Gotham before Batman.
Right.
Instead, and with a little bit of the soap opera feel, the CW feel to it, with all the interrelationships, interactions.
Yeah,
But it's still interesting so far.
I'll give you that. Well, I think that unless you have anything else to add, John, this has been a good episode of Speaking Up for the week. Um,
I'm
so,
with it.
all right. So, thank you guys for watching and listening, and we'll be back next week to talk about yet another one of these shows. So, in the meantime, don't put your kid caught in the door.